Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 15 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike. That is Gavin. Gavin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. It's not we're not buried in snow up here in South Dakota like we were in the last couple of weeks. So it was a little chilly today, and it's weird. So like everyone thinks South Dakota is just like super, like super cold, and like it is. But my part of South Dakota, like the western part of South Dakota, doesn't stay snowy all that long. Like it'll snow a lot, and we'll have a lot of snow for like a little over a week, and then we'll go like 2 weeks where it's like low to mid 50s, and it'll just do that. It'll just do that all winter.
I mean, I'd almost prefer that, because you still get to have the snow, but also you can like walk outside.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Well, there's also, I'm sure everybody who lives, actually, I think pretty much everybody, at least in North America, remembers, just like what about a month ago when it was like bone shatteringly cold. When
Yes.
Texas was, without power, and lots and lots of snow in Texas. Uh, it was without wind chill, like comfortably below 20 below here.
Wow.
So yeah,
Which makes me
but
very happy
anyway.
that spring break is next week for me. So
Nice.
yeah, very good. So before we get started today, let's go ahead and take a look at this week in science. So you spoiled it for me before we started recording,
I
but I happen
did,
to
and
know
I'm
this
so
is
sorry.
no, it is all good. This is a I'm being told this is a paleontology this week in science. So what do we got?
It is. It's one that's like actually kind of related to this podcast for once.
How about that?
So yeah, this is from March 22nd, 2019, and the headline is Scotty the T-Rex is excavated.
Scotty, now is this something let me before you even go any further, is
Sure.
this something you know of, are aware of?
I'm sure like I
Or is
heard
it
about it at the time. As
yeah.
we've talked about, dinosaurs are meh. Uh,
Okay, so you are like somewhat familiar with this, or at least you heard
yeah.
about it before. Okay. All right, go on.
So paleontologists from the University of Alberta announced the successful recovery of what they say was the largest Tyrannosaurus rex ever unearthed at that point. Dubbed Scotty after the celebratory bottle of scotch enjoyed by researchers after the find. Hell yeah. Uh, the dinosaur lived 66 million years ago in prehistoric Saskatchewan, and reconstructions say the dinosaur would have stood 13 meters or 42.6 feet. That is absolutely not true. Like they
Okay.
might have meant long. I
Okay.
do not
That's kind of what I
believe.
was thinking.
Yeah, like so it says 13 meters or 42.6 feet tall and weighed almost 9,000 kilograms, nearly 10 tons. Um, yeah, no, it is absolutely not 42 feet tall. I do not believe that. That is not true. Um,
Is it possible it's 42 feet long?
yes, that makes
Okay.
much more sense. Um, like even some of like the long neck dinosaurs were not 42 feet tall. Actually, I'll finish reading the actual thing before I, dump all over it.
Okay.
Though Scotty was first discovered by paleontologists in 1991, it wasn't until a decade later that researchers were able to carefully pierce the hard sandstone that encased the remains, and several more years until a full reconstruction of the monstrous T-Rex could be completed. Analysis of Scotty's bones show that in addition to being an exceptionally large dinosaur, he also very likely lived a long, violent life of constant combat, as evidenced by countless battle scars across his remains.
All right. So your feelings on dinosaurs are well known. Those aside for a minute, how
So,
like a typical dinosaur, how tall would they be?
I mean, obviously that varies from species to species. And even, within species, yeah, there can be a lot of differences. Like, I know that you and your girlfriend are quite different heights. That kind of thing is
Correct.
common. Um, However, for example, so like the article said, this article claims that this Tyrannosaurus rex was 13 meters tall. For example,
Can you convert that into American for all of us, please?
about 42 feet.
Okay.
For example, the Brachiosaurus, the first dinosaur that you see in Jurassic Park, the one where, the big long neck dinosaur that they see when they get out of the car,
Right.
is roughly about 12 meters tall.
Okay, so that fake dinosaur
Yeah.
is shorter than what they're claiming this one is.
Well, it's not a fake dinosaur. That's a real dinosaur that
Well,
exists.
well, when I say a fake dinosaur, I mean like it was a movie.
Right, but I mean that's a real dinosaur that we know of. We have actual bones of that.
Like it was that size and everything.
Probably, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Sarcastic comment retracted.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, well, the reason why they're so tall is most long neck, like sauropod dinosaurs are is like the technical term for that. The ones with the super super big ones, long neck, long tails.
Right.
Those are sauropods. They generally hold their necks pretty horizontal. There are a group of them that do hold them straighter up, more off the ground, like you see in Jurassic Park. There, that's probably a little exaggerated. That it's not quite perfectly vertical like that. Although the jury on that's kind of still out. There's differing
Hmm.
opinions, as with everything with paleontology, but dinosaur paleontology specifically. But yeah, it's roughly uh, about 12 meters tall. So that's just under about 40 feet. So saying this T-Rex was 13 meters tall is just wildly untrue. Like that, there's literally no way that that's true.
All right. So for I don't know, 15 straight episodes now, it has been made clear. Gavin, not a fan of dinosaur researchers. And just to be clear here, this has more to do with the scientists that do dinosaurs than dinosaurs themselves. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I don't think that this particular mistake, I would not think that this is from the researchers. This is probably just whoever typed up this
Right.
individual page on the calendar messed up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is good to know. And I think with that, we can actually probably get started on today's episode. And I am, for a lot of reasons, I only found out that we were doing this about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes ago. But I am super excited about today's topic today. So, Gavin, do you wanna go ahead and introduce this?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be talking about national parks today. Um, and the reason that we're sort of talking about this is because I had the lucky experience to go to two national parks in the last like 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so. And it was super awesome. And I wanted to talk about national parks and share that with you all.
I am so looking forward to this. I think I've mentioned this before. I have only recently discovered the outdoors, and I am all in on like the outdoors being cool. Just like just being like it doesn't have to be anywhere, grand or glorious. Just
Hmm.
the fact that these places exist, especially in 21st century America, at least.
Hmm.
The fact that there are just these large tracts of land that are just we are going to preserve these. We are going to do what we can to keep this land as is I think is awesome.
Yeah. So being from the East Coast and especially like the Northeast, there are not many parks around. And throughout the course of this episode, when I say parks, I'm referring to national parks.
I was going to say
Um,
because there are like state parks.
yeah, absolutely. And so I've learned just so many things by just moving out here. Like for example, even state parks are completely different in like every other state than they are at least in New York. Because like,
Really.
yeah, so in New York, they're essentially just campgrounds, right? More or
Uh,
less.
more, yeah.
Like there's usually nothing super special about them. Especially up in my neck of the woods in northern New York, like you can drive 15 minutes and drive by the entrances to like 5 state parks.
Yeah, I know there are some, like the one that comes to mind is like Letchworth State Park.
Right.
Like
And I feel like
which
that's
would
an
be kind of a
exception.
counterexample.
Yeah, I feel like that's an exception. Um,
Okay.
but by and large, and maybe that's just even like my small part of New York that I grew up in, but it's like within I'd say 15 minutes in any direction from the house that I grew up in, we could be at probably close to 10 state parks. So like it's they weren't anything special. But then moving out here, for example, Custer State Park is not all that far from where I currently live in South Dakota, and that's like one of the largest state parks in the country. And as just by talking to some of my office mates and stuff, state parks were much less for camping as much as like hiking and doing outdoor things besides just sitting next to your camper and drinking a beer.
Which has its place.
Oh, it absolutely does. But yeah, anyway, tangent aside, for the sake of this episode, when I say parks, I'm referring to national parks. Same thing with monuments, because I'm going to be talking about national monuments as well. But yeah, going up in the Northeast, there really aren't any. There are a handful of national monuments. And I was kind of surprised by how close some of them were to where I grew up and also spent most of my time in like northern and central New York. But yeah, there are 63 national parks across the country, and there are 129 national monuments.
Can we get like a definition for national park and national monument? Like what, like, obviously I think, this may be a running theme on our show at this point.
Mhm.
Like I've got an idea of what that means in my head, but I assume there's a pretty specific definition.
Yeah, there definitely is. And for this one, I won't be mean and make you say what you think. It is just because it is pretty technical.
Okay.
Because there are so many different agencies that manage federal lands.
Right.
And so national parks and national monuments are managed by the National Park Service. However, they're not the only federal lands managed by them, but they are the most um, well known, I guess.
Right.
So a national park, how they're created is similar. National parks and national monuments. So a national park is essentially Congress takes a spot of federal land where there's something, exceptional about it, and they have a vote somebody will basically write a law proposing this specific spot, and they have everything mapped out, so it's like here the borders of the park will be here, and this will be the name of it. We put forward this money to put a visitor center and some roads there and stuff, and but it has to already be federal land, like being managed by another federal land agency. Um, but somebody puts forward that law, they vote on it. If it passes, that is now a national park. National
Okay.
monuments are the only difference really is that instead of it being Congress, it is the president who does it.
Really, the president just does that on their own?
Yes.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, it's essentially the same as like an executive order.
Okay.
I'm sure that there's more to it than that. Because if you don't follow politics all that closely, an executive order is essentially the president writes something. Has an order. Well, actually, you're the civics person. Talk about executive orders and how they differ from laws really
Yeah,
quickly.
so what I'm going to do is I'm going to link in the show notes the way I generally teach this to my students, which is with an SNL clip.
Okay.
Um, there's a wonderful SNL clip on on how executive orders work. Basically, they should have the force of law, but oftentimes Congress, instead of writing down every single possible twist and turn in a law, for instance, naming every single national monument, or passing a law every time they want to make a new one, it'll say, "We hereby designate authority to the President of the United States
Mm,
to declare this a national monument."
okay.
And then the President of the United States will just, like you said, write it down on a piece of paper, send it to, I assume, like somebody in the White House, someone that will, actually put it through the official channels. But basically, it's authority that has been delegated to the President of the United States to do things that have the force of law without needing to go through Congress.
Right. And I had always learned the big difference between like a law passed by Congress and an executive order is that the executive order can be undone by the next president.
That is a bit of an oversimplification, but broadly correct.
Okay. Um, because there was actually a bit of controversy around that in, I think, Trump's second year in office, if I'm remembering correctly, because there was a pair of national monuments that were, um, like established by President Obama that Trump had like opened up to like oil and gas and mineral extraction,
Yeah, I mean,
which
I will
obviously a lot
confess to not
of
knowing about that one.
right, and that's why would you?
Well,
Yeah,
fair enough.
that's not in your circle,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. So sometimes just the very short version is, sometimes the president can just say, I hereby reverse the previous executive order. Sometimes it's they have to go through a process
Hmm.
where that involves like, a public period where the public can, comment on it, and they've got to wait a certain amount of time.
Okay,
But at the end of the day, the president still would have the authority to remove that as long as the proper channels are gone through.
gotcha. Okay. Anyway, long story short, that's the main difference between parks and monuments. Is that one parks are established by Congress, monuments are established by the president. Um, and they're established through the executive branch through the Department of the Interior, which is sort of the overarching department that sort of handles most but not all federal land management. For example, I'm pretty sure Department of Agriculture handles stuff that's managed by the U.S. Forest Service. Um, but that's kind of beside the point for what we're talking about here.
Right.
Um, so even though we're going to be talking about national parks and monuments a lot in this episode, I also do want to touch on some of the other federal land management organizations, because national parks are definitely by no means the most. They don't have the most land. They probably I wouldn't even say they get the most funding. They definitely get the most attention, but they
Right.
definitely don't get the most like funding. And it's the amount of land area covered by the National Park Service is really low compared to some of the others. So, for example, like I mentioned, the United States Forest Service, they manage like national forests and also national grasslands. Um, there is something called the Bureau of Land Management, which
BLM.
yes,
Hashtag
and
BLM.
which was a real like I had never really heard of it until I moved out here, and then I remember driving by somewhere and seeing like BLM office, and then like a sign, and I was like, a BLM office in South Dakota? What? Um, yeah, so that is if I mentioned BLM in this episode, I'm referring to the Bureau of Land Management. Just throwing that out there. There's also the Department of Defense, which handles a decent amount of federal lands. Um, and then there is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is also under the um, Department of Interior. So
And just for the record, that is the official name.
that is
The
the official
Department of
name.
Indian. Yeah,
Yes.
in case anyone was curious.
Yes. Um, so the biggest of all of these, and that's by no means all of them, but the largest is the BLM. It is enormous. So the Bureau of Land Management manages about 13% of total U.S. land area, which is
13%.
13%.
Jeez. I mean, that's,
That
again,
is
13% is a
huge.
small number, but you think about like what 13% means in the context of the United States. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Um, and that works out to about 40% of total federal land, which is just absolutely insane. So generally, if something is designated a national park or a national monument, it is land that was sort of taken from the BLM. And for example, just near me here in South Dakota, um, we have lots of federal lands. There's Badlands National Park, Wind Cave National Park, Mount Rushmore is a national historic site, so still managed by the National Park Service, but is not a monument nor a park. There's Devil's Tower National Monument, which is an actual national monument over in Wyoming. And then there's also Buffalo Gap National Grassland and Black Hills National Forest. Those are just the ones within like a 2-hour drive of where I live in South Dakota. Um, but as you might have noticed, or probably have thought about by this point, almost all of at least the BLM's land and a lot of other federal lands are in the western U.S.
I have my suspicion as to why that is. I don't know if you were going to cover that, but
Go ahead. What do you got?
so my I don't know this exactly, but just kind of knowing a little bit about like the history of the United States, my best guess
Mm-hmm.
is that just like this country was, when I say this country, I mean like generally white people, but was settled from east to west. We were,
Yep.
pretty densely populated in the east to begin with. You think 13 colonies all on the east coast, and then the country kind of slowly moves out west. And the United States federal government had numerous laws. You may remember from your AP U.S. history course, the Homestead
Mm-hmm.
Act,
Yep.
just to like pull people out west to populate those lands with, again, not Native American people, basically. But so there was just more land that wasn't owned, able to be taken. Is kind of my best guess.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. When the United States was established, you know, it's not like the new government was going to be like, "Hey, you living in your log cabin there in Virginia, that's my land now." That was going to be a logistical nightmare if they were going to do that. So if you were already
Of
there, that
course.
was already your land. So it's basically land that was not owned by a person, just sort of became default to, well, first probably the states, realistically, just
Hmm.
because, the 10th Amendment, anything that's not explicitly, you know, to the federal government is to the states. That also kind of applies to land. Um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. With like the Louisiana Purchase, and then with further westward expansions, all that was like default federal land instead of like default private land or state land. That was
Hmm.
then slowly given away to homesteaders essentially. Um, but yeah, if you look up just like a federal land map of, like, for example, like Nevada. Oh, geez,
Which we will link in the
like,
show notes.
sure. Um, God, almost all of Nevada is federal land. It's crazy, and there's not even like all that many like national parks in Nevada. I think there's maybe one or two, but the rest of it is probably managed by the BLM. Um, so they have their work cut out for them. They have so much land and not nearly enough resources allocated to them. Hopefully, that will change. I have really good confidence in the person who just recently got approved as the Secretary of Interior. Her name is Deb Haaland. She's the first Native American Secretary of the Interior. I have really high hopes for some of the things that she's going to do. So hopefully she doesn't disappoint. Um, but with all that being said, um, while the vast majority of things like national parks or other federal lands are in like the western U.S., there are some in the East Coast, and also lots of smaller sites that are managed by the National Park Service called National Historic Sites or National Historic Parks. Um, and there's surprisingly some near where you and I have spent most of our lives. For
Really?
example, there is the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park in Auburn.
Hmm.
There's the Women's Rights National Historic Park in Saratoga
Is
Springs,
that
which
okay?
that one makes sense.
Right.
And there's also a few national monuments in upstate New York. Most of them are around the city. Like, for example, um, Stonewall is a national
Hmm.
historical site,
The Stonewall
um,
Inn, yeah.
or a national monument. Yes. Um, and then there's also a fort that was used in the Revolutionary War near Rome, New York. That was originally demolished to like expand the city of Rome itself, and then they rebuilt it and made it a national monument, which is actually kind of funny.
I
However, the
love that.
closest national park is, I had always thought, was Acadia National Park, which is in Maine, just
It's
because
not
that's
Acadia.
no, it's not. I really thought it was until doing some of the research for this episode. It's actually
Wow.
Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio, which is
Wow.
I looked at a map. It literally looks like it's in like downtown Cleveland, which I don't understand. So,
Okay.
anyway, yeah. So, and from central New York, that's about 5 hours away. Um, which, to anyone who lives in sort of the central United States, like South Dakota, 5 hours really isn't all that far. But to an East Coaster, 5 hours is a ways.
Yeah, right. Five. I mean, I can drive. I can drive five. I can drive 30 minutes and get wherever I need.
Exactly. Uh, but yeah, so even if you can't just like feasibly go to a national park, there are lots of other ways to enjoy federal lands. Most of them, like I said, in the East Coast, typically are things to do with like the Revolutionary War or sometimes the Civil War. So, or sometimes just really odd, uh, different historical places that you might not think are like federally managed, such as Stonewall, but they are, and it's on my personal bucket list to go to all the national parks, as well as
Hmm.
many national monuments as I possibly can. But the big thing that I wanted to get across here is that national parks and literally all federal lands are your land. You know, your taxes go to maintain it. That is a not insignificant part of what your taxes go toward. And especially when it comes to places with infrastructure to support visitors, like the vast majority of land managed by the BLM doesn't really have roads. If it had super interesting things to see, it probably would have been designated a park by now or a monument.
Right.
And there definitely are exceptions to that. Like I'm taking a class right now that talks a lot about just resource management essentially.
Right.
Um, like natural resource management, mostly focusing on fossils because um, but we have talked a lot about all the various land management agencies, and there are definitely a handful that are interesting but not managed to or managed by the National Park Service. So look up just like federal lands in my area, and I bet you'd be very surprised about some of the things near you that are just really interesting and worth going to.
And so that kind of brings me to one of my questions. You mentioned that this is federal lands or your lands. National parks
Mm-hmm.
they belong to everyone and no one
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, or at least at least all Americans, I guess, depending on how you wanted to look at it.
Well, yeah.
What does that mean? Like, what can you do in a federal park? Okay, this is my land. I can go in here. Do you have to pay money to get into a federal park? When you get into a federal park, what are and you know you're not allowed? What can and can you not do at a national park? What what's the point?
So each land management agency has different rules, and even within, you know, say for example, the national forest that I live near, the Black Hills National Forest, could be different than there's a national forest in Central New York, Finger Lakes National Forest. They have I haven't looked specifically at each of their rules, but there's probably some differences between them. Um, but if we're talking about parks specifically, um, you do have to pay to get into, I think, all of them, but it's generally not all that much. Like I think it was uh, for one like carload, so just a regular car, not like a bus full of people or something. It was somewhere between 20 and $30. So it's really not all
Okay.
that expensive. Um, you can camp at most of them. It is relatively pricey to be honest, you know, but obviously you're paying that extra for the experience to be like, oh, I camped in Yellowstone, oh, I camped in Badlands National Park, so you're paying for that experience, um, and so most of them do have things like hiking trails, visitor centers, and things like that. There's generally a decent amount of like educational material at like there's let's see. I'm gonna leave Yellowstone out of this because Yellowstone is its own monster. It is like by far the largest. Um, But so for the other three that I've been to, I've only been to 4 parks. So that'd be Badlands National Park, Arches National Park, and Canyonlands National Park. So the three of them have like a designated loop for you to sort of drive through,
Hmm.
and every maybe quarter to half mile they'll have like a designated spot to turn out and get out and take pictures and things. Generally they'll have educational material at each of those about like why did we put basically what they want you to look at that spot,
Okay.
or maybe just like um, here's this thing about this endangered animal that is protected by this park. um, so that's a lot of if you're not super into like hiking, that's probably the majority of what your experience of the park will be.
Hmm.
um, but my best experiences with national parks is by far the hiking. um, and I'm sure this is different for every park. Like I'm sure that one in Ohio, which like I said is like look, I don't know if it is, but looked like it was literally in Cleveland. um, I don't think there's probably great hiking at that particular park. um, but the four that I've been to, the best part of going to that park was definitely the hiking, because it is challenging but not like ridiculous. And also, these places are picked for a reason because they're just like natural beauty. And like especially this time I will include Yellowstone now because I climbed Mount Washburn, which I think was the largest peak in the park. And like short of climbing like Everest or something, which I know I'm not ever going to do, uh, that
Not with
was
that attitude.
no. I like hiking. I am not uh, like a mountaineer. No, thank you. Um, but yeah, so short of doing something like that was the most beautiful sight I'd ever seen. It just incredible.
So if you're someone that hasn't hiked and like you don't quite get it, if you have a federal park around you or a national
Hmm.
park around you, like might be a good idea to go check it out just to see if it's something you're into. Because if you go to a federal park and you start hiking and you don't like it, odds are it's just not your thing.
Hmm.
But if you've never done it and you've never
That's definitely the place to
experienced
do it
it,
for the first
give it a
time.
shot. Especially if there's one, like we talked about, there's probably a national park somewhere around you. Go give it a shot, and the lands are picked for a reason.
Hmm. And so that's sort of the things that you can do at the park. Like I said, Yellowstone is its own monster. Most of them don't have um, stuff like a restaurant or something at them or a place to eat. Yellowstone does, but again, that's just because Yellowstone is enormous. Most parks are probably smaller than you think. I don't have like a number for like how large of an area is like the average for them.
Hmm.
Um, but I know like myself, just looking at a map of when I went to Arches and Canyonlands, they were definitely smaller than I thought they would be. Uh, but that doesn't mean they're any less beautiful, right? So
Right.
when it comes to things that you cannot do at a national park, it is pretty much what you would think. You can't take things from there. That is very illegal. Um, and for example, I will say I'm not gonna like super advertise this but like most parks don't have like amazing security. Some of them do. Um, but for example, like uh, at my school, at the museum in my school, we did like a rock and fossil ID day for people from the community to bring stuff that they found in. We'd tell them more about it. Um, and so somebody brought in what was very clearly a fossil from Badlands National Park, or at least that area.
This somebody was not you, I assume.
No, well, I was one who identified it,
Okay.
but they brought it in. I knew what it was, and especially from Badlands, the fossils have like a really, really like telltale reddish color, which is not typical of fossils.
Oh.
Yeah. Um, so I told him what it was, and I'm like, just out of curiosity, me knowing full well that he stole this from a park, I was like, just out of curiosity, where'd you get this? And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, okay, get out of here.
Okay, buddy.
But and here's the thing. So, like I said, these lands belong to everybody, including you. So, what the way I interpret that and mean that to say is, if you see somebody messing with stuff, that is your land. Go tell them to stop doing that. Because, for example, there's actually a really well documented example of people taking things from a park or a monument, and then that monument no longer existing. Like, they decommissioned that monument because people kept taking things.
You're kidding.
No, so there was originally another monument relatively nearby me here in South Dakota called Fossil Cycad National Monument. So cycads they're a type of plant that is still around, but they were a lot more common in the past. I'm not a plant person at all, but to my knowledge, they're what like palm trees and trees such as that evolved from, or at least are really closely related. So it's basically a palm tree, but instead of being a large tree, it's like a bulb, sort of really close to the ground that then has like palm fronds that come off of it.
Okay.
So it was called Fossil Cycad National Monument. You can Google it, or we can throw it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, what was the name of it one more time?
Fossil Cycad National Monument.
National Monument. It will be in the show notes.
And so it was only around for 35 years. It was established, I think, in 1922 and was decommissioned in, I think, 1957.
It has 2 stars on Google reviews.
You can still go visit where it was. There's roads and stuff there. And I think there's even like a little sign.
Right.
But yeah, like up until then, and until relatively recently as well, like there was pretty much no penalty for taking things, or at least a penalty that was just so weakly enforced that it was basically pointless. But people just went and took all these fossil cycads because they were very obvious. They're basically just a big hunk of what looks like rock until you take a closer look at it, just sticking out of the ground. And you could literally just go pick it up and take it with you. And that was completely, I don't know if that was legal, but if it was illegal, it was just not enforced.
It was de facto legal.
Yeah. And
it was like pirating music in 2005.
Exactly. And so after a while, I'm sure if you really looked around there, you could probably still find 1 or 2 fossil cycads, but there used to be hundreds of them. And like I said, now you'd be lucky if you went there and found like 1 or 2. And
jeez, that's wow.
Yeah. So they decommissioned it. And that is absolutely horrible. And like there are some ways to, like properly take things from parks. Like, for example, the school that I go to for grad school is a federal repository, which means that like fossils found on federal lands in the general vicinity of my school come to my school to be housed there because the government has examined our facilities and deemed that we can appropriately take care of them, which is actually kind of funny because like I've seen our collections and like we do take care of our stuff. The people that work there currently are phenomenal. Our preparator, who's the person who once a fossil comes in, takes all the rock off of it and makes sure that it's stable to be housed in our collections, put essentially forever, and can repair fossils. She's phenomenal. We just got a new collections manager, so like once it's actually in the collections, he's the one who controls sort of where things are, all the documentation for everything, all the paperwork saying, okay, we're getting this fossil from Badlands National Park. Here's its identification number, here's all the stuff that comes with it, here's what it's going to be, here's where it's going to be, and controls if we loan something out, he's the one who controls that. So all the people that are currently working there are phenomenal. but our collection does need work, as pretty much every other paleontological collection does.
Right.
Um, so obviously, for science reasons, like generally, it's and even this actually kind of depends on the park. Now that I'm thinking about it, um, but if something is like immediately in danger of like if it rains in the next like 2 years, it's going to fall out and break, then it will be excavated and brought to a repository. Um,
Hmm. Which makes sense.
right. Um, and so we have, I'd say like the vast majority of our collection space is designated for federal fossils. Um, so like there are definitely reasons to take things from parks. However, if you cannot like, there's many legal hoops that you have to jump through and paperwork that you need to file before you can even like ask to take something from a park. So
I can't imagine the bureaucracy that would go along with that.
yeah, and so like even if you think like if you like, oh, there's this little rock that I found, like no, that's so if you have a rock like that fits in the palm of your hand, that belongs equally to everyone, right? So if you divide that rock by 330 million, that's like smaller than a grain of sand. So
Right.
like no, don't take even that little rock. You're being a bad person. If you take things from a park, you are a bad person. Cool? Cool. Anyway.
Agreed.
Uh, but anyway, so let's go back to talking a little more about like the structure of parks, and sort of where some of them are located. So
Let's do it.
California has the most parks, which like makes sense because
I
California is
wouldn't have
just,
guessed that actually.
I mean, it's gigantic. California is so big. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, but there's so many people
California,
there too.
yeah, that's fair. But California has 9 parks. After that comes Alaska, which intuitively makes more sense. Uh,
Yes, because all like
um,
larger and less people.
yeah. So and then so Alaska has 8, and then after that, I think the next highest is Utah with 5, and then most other states just have 1. Um, However, I was actually really surprised that because I actually looked up what the most visited national park was, and I asked my office mates today during one of our classes, or
Ooh,
like in between classes. I was not disrupting class, but what they thought it was because most of my office mates are from like the Midwest. They're more used to parks than me, so I'm like my judgment is probably kind of askew because I don't know.
right.
um,
Hmm.
and not one of them got it right, but it's
Hmm.
actually Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee and North Carolina.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah. Um,
That
so yeah,
I
if you
guess that makes some amount of sense because it's around a decent number of people. I know that the Appalachian Trail crosses through there,
yeah,
which yeah, I guess that makes some amount of sense if you're going to pick a national, or it would be one that's closest to a decent number of people. So I wouldn't have guessed that, but I guess it makes some amount of sense.
right. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting. Just like especially with this class that I'm taking now, like I said, actually learning about all the things that go into parks and their management. It's really interesting and a class that like I'll be honest, what I was not incredibly excited about taking. But you know, because it was like this is my last semester in grad school. You know, well, fingers crossed. Um, and we had a previous collections manager because, like I said, this one who we have currently is new. This is his first year. Who taught classes about like museum exhibit design, taught classes about like museum collections management. So like once it's already in your collections, now what? Um, those were classes that I was really excited about taking, but because the old collections manager got a new job and they had to hire somebody new, I missed out on those classes.
Right.
Um, so of the 3 that were taught by the collections manager, this was one that I was definitely the least excited about taking. But I'm really enjoying it and learning a ton just about how the government works, but not in the way that like most people actually care about.
Yeah, right. Not like Schoolhouse Rock, how the government works, but probably the more practical application of that, I assume.
I mean, I think saying Schoolhouse Rock would actually be quite accurate.
Gavin, when are you going to be a father? Because that was a wonderful dad joke.
Dude,
Oh my god, I love that.
I am so sorry that I just did
Don't
that
be
to you.
sorry. That was
I'm so,
amazing.
oh, I'm
You
not
know what?
apologizing to you. You're used to it. Listeners, I am so sorry.
No, listeners, if you heard that, you know just how awesome that was. Make sure you send this episode out to all your friends, grow the audience here, and make sure everybody hears just that A+ dad joke.
Thank you. But yeah, so if anything you get from this episode, please just Google, like I said, even though you might have a lot of BLM land near you, it probably doesn't have anything. It's probably just flat open space, realistically. And the BLM actually lets a lot of like ranchers just let their cows loose on it.
Oh.
Sure. But even if you're in like a city, particularly cities on like the East Coast, sorry, West Coast, but so many cities on the East Coast have like really long histories.
Mm-hmm.
So I can guarantee if you're in like a decent sized city that like was around throughout like the Civil War or the Revolutionary War, I guarantee that there's probably a national monument within like an hour drive of you.
Yeah, I mean
And
it's a decent bet. There's nothing's that far away from anything else over on the East Coast here.
yeah, but yeah, if there's one thing that I wanted to sort of just impart on you all, please go visit nationally or federally managed lands, because your money supports them, and as you know was kind of evident to people who sort of pay attention to like federal lands and stuff like that, potentially a different administration or even this one, I mean we still have to watch what this one's doing, um, can really mess things up, and like you said, if you didn't even hear about the Trump administration opening up those two national monuments to federal exploitation or to uh, mineral or oil extraction.
Honestly, I may have, but it was a long 4 years.
That's fair. But like most people probably didn't, or they did, and like if you did, you didn't remember it.
Nope.
But those are your lands. Those belong to you, and you have the right to
And
go visit them, and you should, because if you don't support them, stuff like that's going to keep happening, and we can't let it happen.
Right, and they really are just treasures. Like we joke about this with my family, just how unoutdoorsy we all are. Particularly my mother. She will frequently sarcastically say, I was a horrible mother because I never took you guys camping. I never took you guys this or that. And so it's kind of been more on my own and with friends that I've been like, oh wow, like hiking is fun. Like I remember the first time I climbed a mountain and I was like, oh wow, this is like I want to do this. And the fact that there is all this opportunity in a country this vast, it is not an opportunity to be wasted.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and also, really quick before we sign off, I do want to give a couple little quick facts that I learned
Oh please.
while doing a little bit of this research. So, probably one of the hardest national parks to get to is, you would think, maybe one of the ones in Alaska, maybe the one in Hawaii, because there is one in Hawaii.
Right.
In my opinion, it would be, there's actually a national park in American Samoa.
Is there?
There is. I did not know that, which is really interesting. So, I think that's really neat and a really interesting way to help protect island ecosystems are just being demolished by, I mean, basically everything that humans do. But
Yeah.
it's good. It's a good way to protect them as much as we can. And then there's also, I believe it's a national monument. It is not a park, so I'm pretty sure it's a monument. But the Marianas Trench, the deepest
Oh.
point on the planet, is managed by Actually, so I was wrong. It is not managed by the National Park Service. It is actually managed by NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Aeronautic Administration, Atmospheric
Okay.
Administration, NOAA, the weather people. And so, I mean, really, but they, yeah, that is a national monument. It is in the Northern Marianas Islands, which apparently we own. Um,
Yes, they are. The Northern Mariana Islands are akin to Puerto Rico. For anyone curious, just in the Pacific Ocean.
okay, but yeah, so you and I own the Marianas Trench. Neat.
I had no idea. I never put those two together. The Northern Mariana Islands and the Marianas Trench.
Mm-hmm.
I should have put those two together, but
I mean, I didn't
I
either.
had no idea. Yeah. Well, we're talking about U.S. territories. I mentioned Puerto Rico and the Northern Mariana Islands,
Mhm.
and you mentioned American Samoa. Well beyond the scope of this episode, but
Oh
if you're
yes, geez.
if you're interested in some like odd bureaucracy, American Samoa's political status,
Oh
look into it.
God, yeah. Or if you want to have a good day, don't.
Yeah, well,
it's yeah. There's a lot of.
it's odd more than anything.
It is odd.
Right.
It is odd.
Well, so since we're hinting at it very quickly,
Yeah, go
not
ahead.
not to tease everybody. So if you are born anywhere in any populated area in the United States, which includes places that are managed by Native Americans, that includes the federal district of Washington D.C., and includes almost every populated territory, like Puerto Rico, for the most famous one,
Mhm.
or Guam, or the U.S. Virgin Islands, or the Northern Mariana Islands. If you are born there, you are a citizen.
Mhm.
If you are born in American Samoa, you are not an American citizen. You are an
Yeah.
American national, which is
Yep.
not a term I have ever heard in any other context besides American Samoa.
Yeah.
It is strange, and there seems to be no reason for it.
Oh no, there's very clear reason for it. It's racism.
Well, okay, well, fine.
But what's crazy is that American Samoa also has the highest percentage of any
Military, right?
state, territory, protectorate, whatever, of military service.
Yes, which is just, again, absolutely wild.
Which, so by percentage, more of them go and fight to protect us and do whatever the American military does. And yet they're not even citizens, which is so stupid. Anyway.
Yeah,
well beyond the scope of this podcast.
Yeah, right. Well beyond not just this podcast, but like the podcast at large, not just this episode. So we can leave that there. Are there any other kind of national park fun facts or any other anything else that we should be aware of as we bring this episode to a close on national parks, because they are they are truly a national treasure?
Off the top of my head, I don't think so. I just thought it was something that I really want to talk about, and it was timely because I had visited two of them, like I said, in the last 3 weeks or so. I plan on visiting another because Wind Cave National Park, which I mentioned earlier, is only like a half an hour away from where I live here in South Dakota, but they've had a number of just like logistical problems recently. Number one, COVID, because it's literally a cave, so it's like they're not letting people in the cave because of COVID, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And also, for a while, like pre-COVID, for the like 5 or so months, 6 months that I was living here before COVID, their elevator down into the cave wasn't working.
Oh, that's a problem.
So, yeah. Hopefully, by the time I have a fair amount of time after graduation to just kind of kick around and do stuff. Hopefully, everything will be working by that point. So,
yeah, that would be. I'm looking forward to that whenever you and I can go into national parks together again.
Absolutely.
You look forward from a live recording from a cave at some point. Well, this has been a fun, informative episode of I Wish You Were Dead. Thank you to everybody for listening. We will see you guys again next week, and take care, everybody.